You know, we all have them. Habits. Some are great, some are not so great, and some are the ones we desperately want to change. But what if you could actually hack them? Today, we're going to dive into the incredible science of how our habits get wired into our brains, and more importantly, how we can finally take control.
I mean, it's the million-dollar question, right? Why is it so ridiculously easy to get lost scrolling on our phones, but so hard to just go to the gym? We know what we should be doing, so why is there this huge gap between knowing and actually doing? Well, to really understand how to build better habits in our own everyday lives, we're going to go somewhere pretty extreme. A place where habits aren't just about self-improvement, they're literally about life and death.
Okay, so picture this. You're in Iraq. A split-second decision can be everything. To handle that kind of pressure, the U.S. military has basically perfected the science of behavior change. They train recruits to react automatically, perfectly, even when everything is exploding around them.
And when a researcher looked into this, he asked an Army major how they did it. The major's answer was just mind-blowing. He basically said, look, the entire military is a giant habit change machine. They're experts at overriding old behaviors and installing new, life-saving ones. So how on earth do they pull that off?
Well, what they use is a surprisingly simple but unbelievably powerful three-part formula. They get super specific about each and every step to make sure the habit becomes second nature. So let's break that down.
First up, the cue. Now this is where it gets really interesting. They found that the sound of an explosion was actually a terrible trigger. It's confusing, it's overwhelming, it's hard to tell where it came from. So instead, they trained soldiers to react to something much more reliable, the visual of a huge cloud of dust. That's the signal that kicks off the whole routine.
Okay, so the dust cloud is the cue. The routine is to immediately take cover, scan your sector, report your status. And that brings us to the final and frankly, brilliant piece of the puzzle, the reward. In the middle of all that chaos, the most powerful reward isn't some medal later on. It's the immediate social reinforcement from your team. Hearing a teammate say, "Good job, I'm in position," gives your brain this jolt of safety and camaraderie that cements the entire loop. Now, what's so fascinating is that this military formula isn't some top-secret thing. It's actually built on a fundamental neurological process that drives all of our habits, whether it's biting your nails or compulsively checking your email. And this is it. This is the engine that's always running in the background of our lives, the habit loop. You've got a cue, which is the trigger, that launches a routine, which is the behavior, and that leads to a reward. And that reward is what tells your brain, hey, that was good. Let's remember this whole loop for next time. So why should you care so much about these little loops? Well, because of this number right here, 45%. Just let that sink in for a second. Research shows that nearly half of everything you do every single day isn't a conscious choice. It's a habit. Almost half of your day is running on autopilot.
So, if you want to change a habit, it's tempting to focus on the cue or the routine, right? But it turns out, the real superstar of the whole operation, the most important part of the loop, is the reward. That's the part that really makes your brain sit up and say, okay, remember this, do it again.
And get this, the kind of reward you use is a huge deal. The research on this is just staggering. It shows that negative reinforcement, punishing yourself or being hard on yourself, is only 1/20th as effective as giving yourself a positive reward.
I mean, just look at the difference here. It's not even a fair fight. You would have to beat yourself up 20 times to get the same motivational boost you get from one single positive reward. It's just how we're wired. Our brains are built to seek pleasure, not just to avoid pain.
And you can see this working everywhere. With your kids, offering 15 extra minutes of Xbox works way better than threatening to take it away. In public health, adding a really nice scent to soap gets more people to wash their hands than scary warnings about germs. And for you, that smoothie right after a run is infinitely more powerful than telling yourself you're lazy for not running faster.
Okay, so how do we actually put all this into practice? Well, it turns out there are really two different playbooks, and it all depends on whether you're trying to build a new habit from scratch or fix an old one that's already there.
So if you're building a brand new habit, you want to stack the deck in your favor. Use multiple cues, like lay out your running clothes and text a friend to meet you. And start with small wins. Just getting out the door is a victory. But to change an old habit, the strategy is totally different. You don't fight the loop, you hijack it. You keep the old cue and the old reward, and you just swap out the routine in the middle. This right here is the golden rule. It's probably the most powerful idea for changing a bad habit.
So let's say stress, that's the cue. Makes you want a cigarette because you're craving that feeling of relief, that's the reward. You don't try to eliminate stress. Instead, you find a new routine that gives you a similar sense of relief, like doing a few quick push-ups or just taking a walk around the block.
And this explains why it so often takes a few tries to make a change stick. The average smoker, for instance, tries to quit about 7 times. But with each attempt, they're not really failing. They're gathering data. They learn willpower runs out. They learn that stress is a huge cue. And eventually, they build a real plan for it. They stop being their own worst enemy and start becoming a scientist of their own behavior.
So we've been talking a lot about physical actions, but the most powerful habits of all, the real game changers, are the ones that happen entirely inside our own heads, our automatic ways of thinking.
And that brings us to our final story, Qantas Flight 32. It suffered one of the worst mechanical failures in modern aviation history. An engine literally exploded, shredding the wing, and in an instant, 12 of the 14 critical systems needed to keep this giant plane in the air were just gone.
In that moment of absolute chaos, with alarms blaring everywhere, the captain did something that sounds completely insane. He took a breath, and he consciously chose to change the story in his head. He told himself, okay, I'm going to stop trying to fly this broken super jumbo jet, and I'm going to pretend I'm back in the simple little Cessna I learned to fly on.
That simple act of changing the story was a contemplative routine. It was a mental habit he had practiced. It allowed him to cut through the noise, simplify an impossible problem, tap into his core flying skills, and land that plane safely, saving all 469 people on board.
And that, really, brings us to the final crucial idea. The stories we tell ourselves about what we can and can't do, about our limits, about how we react to stress, those are just habits too. They can be automatic and hold us back, or they can be deliberate and life-saving. So the question is, what's the most important story you tell yourself? And is it maybe time to write a new one?